everyone, so today I'm going to be continuing in my Arteza sketchbook. This is kind of the one where I'm starting things with the story of my life and things I remember. So this was a sketch of my childhood home and the neighborhood sign. And then I thought here I would start sketching out some old things that I remember in particular that I talk about to my kids all the time. For example, the kitchen phone that was a very yellow, mustard yellow color with a cord that went all the way from the kitchen into the living room. Give me a thumbs up if you remember what I'm talking about. And then this is the phone that was in my parents' bedroom. It was a black phone. And then in the middle of our living room, probably even more pronounced than the television, was this huge tape deck. These were those circular round tape reels, and my dad would have like 3 or 4 different soundtracks from different movies on one reel. These things seemed to just never end. I really don't remember how long, how much time each reel could hold, but I know they were a lot longer than the vinyl records that they had laying around. So that's another thing I thought about, but I didn't think it would look great on this page yet, so I'll probably do that on a separate page as some vinyl records and a record player. So anyway, these are just a few of the items that we had in the house. The kitchen phone, my parents' bedroom phone, and a tape deck. I thought I would sketch those out and watercolor those today. So my setup with my tools is still kind of under construction, kind of figuring out what's working for me and what's not. But I do really like this compact Winsor Newton travel palette. It's I think called the Field Pocket Palette. I have a video of the unboxing of this and also how I modified it to include 2 additional colors. Those additional 2 colors are from Daniel Smith, so I'll link that here in the cards above. And then this is a Hobonichi drawer pouch, and for now it is housing my extra travel brushes. Here's my kneadable eraser, and also this spray bottle. This is from an old scrapbook company called Close to My Heart. So the spray bottle, why I like it is it's a little bit larger than the mini mister, so it holds quite a bit of water. I probably refill this like once a month when I'm doing watercoloring, because I need so little of it, but at the same time it holds plenty of water. So my sketches here I did with my black wing pencil. I think I did this with the gray pencil, the 602, so it does put down a bit of heavier lead, but I was okay with that for this particular drawing because I knew most of these, except for the mustard yellow phone, were going to be pretty dark. I do outline all of my sketches at this point in black ink, so the pencil marks rarely show through anyway in my watercolors because I try to be pretty detailed in going right on top of those same marks. Now that initial pen is a thicker pen. I forgot what it's called, so I'll make sure to link it below. It's one that Dina Wakley uses a lot in her mixed media albums. It puts down a very thick black line, which is great, but now that I'm writing numbers and doing smaller details, I'm moving on to a 05. This is my Zig Millennium. I've had this pen, I'm going to guess, about 10 years. So it is just now starting to dry out on me. Now when I was scrapbooking, I did not hand letter a lot of things, but my journal prompts I would write with this pen. So that's the main reason why it's lasted this long. So I did order a new set of pens that will come later this week. So I'll make sure to do an unboxing of those since all my black pens are just about hitting that point where they're dried out since I've had them for so many years. So this first phone that I'm outlining is the black phone that was in my parents' bedroom. So as I'm drawing this out, I'm kind of contemplating in my head how to really show shadow and shine. You know how a black phone, especially these, they were super glossy, and if the light shines on them, they get kind of this shiny look to them. So I'm contemplating in my head how I'm going to translate that or show that with watercolor. Now here I'm realizing that I could have been a lot less detailed in my pencil sketch. Here I should have just laid down a general outline of the cord and then drawn all these details when I went back in. So I'm still kind of learning what details I need to pre-draw out in pencil versus what I could really do after the fact when I go back in. As you'll notice, I'm not using a ruler here. I'm doing that on purpose. I'm trying to get used to the feel of just putting my wrist directly on the paper and drawing as straight of lines as possible. That way it can keep that loose, sketchy feel and not feel like it's something ultra structured. Since I'm not looking for perfection here, I'm just looking to document the memories and kind of get the feel of, just a time gone by and just kind of going with my thoughts of things that I remember from that time. So my dad bought this particular tape deck in the late 1970s when we still lived in Japan. So this was kind of like his baby and pride and joy that he brought back with him when we moved from Japan to the United States. So it was made by Sony, and he had all these gray boxes with like a little orange push button at the top, and that would store individual tape reels. And I don't remember how many hours of music each reel could hold, but they had a teakwood shelf that pretty much lined the whole back living room wall, and the entire bottom shelf was just full of these tapes. So he had a whole bunch of stuff that he had recorded over the years. Now this phone will forever be embedded in my brain. This is the yellow mustard phone. We moved into that house in 1978, and this is the phone provided. I believe even back then they provided the phone from the builder, because everybody had this same phone. I don't know. I think the company was Southwestern Bell back then, but everybody had this phone in this color in this neighborhood. So over the years, I do remember my mom changing out this cord, and it ended up being this really, really long cord that she could take from the kitchen through the dining room all the way into the living room. That cord went, it seemed like, forever. So every time we hung up the phone, of course, we had to, in essence, wrap up this cord and throw it over the top of the phone in order to store it nicely so it wasn't dragging all over the kitchen floor. So I don't know how many of you had that same phone, but if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. So these were the kinds that, you could unscrew those pieces, and, you might see in the old spy movies that if someone was being spied on, there'd be a secret microphone inside of the telephone receiver. So now I'm using the Winsor Newton Cotman series. I started with, I'm using the darker yellow in this particular kit, and I forgot what this particular one is. I want to guess that it's Hansa Yellow Medium. And so I'm just putting what I call my base coat. I start with a very light base coat, and then I come back to add the shading. I'm assuming in this particular drawing that the light is coming from the right hand side, so I'm trying to make the left-hand side a little bit more darker here and there. The brush I'm using is a size 10 Princeton Neptune. What I love about this Princeton Neptune brush is that I can go down pretty thick with things, but then I can get just the finest little details with this size 10. So as you can see here, this little bitty rectangle, I was able to do it, and even in between all these little finger circles in the dial, I was able to get a different shade. So I know I probably should have at this point changed to like a size 6 round brush, but I did this entire painting with this size 10. I was just determined that I didn't want to stop, and I didn't want to rummage through my supplies and look for another brush at this point. So now I'm just going to focus on adding some shading to this. So I'm adding a little bit of burnt, I want to say I added burnt sienna to this to just kind of brighten it up a little bit and darken it up. With that base coat, it's really easy to just kind of blend into those layers, add a little bit more water to it, and then it will blend even better as it goes on. So this yellow is really close to the actual color of the phone. So here I'm taking that burnt sienna again, and I'm just adding more and more layers to try to get this to be a little darker and let these pieces stand out a little bit more as we go on. The water is staying pretty clean at this point, and then I went in to add the burnt sienna right here. So it looks pretty red, but I knew that all of my paint here was still wet. So the idea was to put it down just to add a little bit of shadowing, but then the beauty of this Neptune brush is it really picks up excess like a sponge. And so I was able to pick up any excess paint and just make those darker details that I was wanting to emphasize in the shading. So this is a moment where I got too rushed and I didn't take that moment to pause and let things dry thoroughly. So, but this is where this brush is amazing. This Princeton Neptune, I just keep going back in and just taking away the paint. And it is a very absorbent brush. So I'm not only using it as a brush, I'm also using it like a sponge. So I sponged up as much as the excess that I could with the brush, and then after I let it dry, I'll go back in and fill back in that yellow area. So this light gray wash here I made by combining ultramarine blue with the burnt umber. With the burnt sienna. So I can get this really dark color that I'm doing right here, or I can get the super, super light shade that I used as the under part of my painting. So you'll see here that I just kind of work in layers to build this up. I wasn't quite sure how I wanted to do it at first, but little by little this paint just really layers well. So it allowed me the flexibility to build up this shading little by little as I went and as I saw the darker areas that I wanted. It's a really, really glossy phone, and if you'll notice, those old phones, when they were numbered 1 through 0 or 0 through 9, however you want to look at it, they also had ABCs over them. Like the number 1 had ABC, letter 2 had DEF, letter 3, GHI. But because I'm just trying to get the mood of the object, I did not write every single detail that this phone has. So Instead, I'm focusing more on the details of the lighting and the shading and just the general feel of what having one of these phones was like back then. So this cord, this has kind of been a neat thing to do, you know, painting the cord completely with a light color and then just going back in and dotting in the darker shading. And that just gives it the illusion that there's still those glossy spots that are getting the reflection of light versus the darker spots in the cord. So with these dials, there's always just that little bit of shading in there because the dials do pop off of the phone a little bit. Also, the receiver at this point is a little bit separated from the base of the phone. So I'm trying to make more of a distinction here by adding some darker shading to separate the receiver from the rest, from the phone base itself. So now I'll go in with that tip of the size 10 and just get that extra bit of shading added to the coils of the phone cord itself. And then I'm going to use that same gray that I was using on my phone, and I'm going to use that on the tape deck. So these reels, some of them were clear, some of them were beige, and some of them were this color. It was almost like a semi-translucent smoky gray color. So that's what I'm imitating here by using that gray, but it also kind of helps pull the whole picture together. The yellow phone uses the same, you know, mixture of gray, the black phone, and then this tape deck as well. So it kind of helps tie everything together that is on this particular page. So this thing has lots of buttons, lots of knobs, and I didn't go into a lot of detail when I was drawing these out. I mainly just wanted to get the gist. And then what I always remember was when he turned this on, these two yellow lights would come on where I guess those are sound meters, where the meters would turn on and those little needles would move back and forth. So I wanted to make sure to put that yellow. So I used the same yellow as I used in the phone, again, to kind of just tie things together in the picture so that they don't look so disconnected. So here I'm using the burnt sienna to get like this reddish brown color. And this was just perfect because that was pretty much the color of all our furniture in our house back then. It had this wood-like look to it. I don't know if you remember in the 70s in particular, everything was like brown. We had brown carpet, we had brown curtains, we had brown and beige curtains, and then all the furniture was like dark brown leather, and the shelves were this shade of brown. So it was like brown upon layers of brown, kind of like I guess today is gray layers on top of gray. So kind of the same concept, just with brown back then. So this really does depict a lot of what those colors were like. So this is again another spot where I was really impressed with this Princeton Neptune size 10 paintbrush, because yes, it made sense to paint the large areas of this piece with the big brush, but right here where all these little bitty details are, I really would have had a much easier time if I had switched to like a size 6 or 4 or 2. But no, I was bound and determined that I was going to continue to do this all with a size 10 paintbrush. And it worked only because the quality of this brush, the quality of the tip really allows me to get the flexibility of that many different sizes. So now I'm coming back in with the burnt umber to really add some extra dark shading, you know, gathering that the sun's coming from the right and that all of that is in the left. And so trying to add a little bit of dimension to these reels as well, trying to add a little bit of shading under them, as well as the area where the tape follows. The tape would connect from one reel and it would go under this silver piece that says Sony, and then it would connect on the other side to the other reel. So as one was getting emptied, the other one was getting filled. So now the shadows on the bottom, I'm using that same gray mixture. I'm going a little bit darker. This is the ultramarine blue mixed with burnt umber, and as you can see, it just adds just a little bit of shading and kind of grounds these items so that they don't totally look like they're just floating in space. So just adding a little bit of shadow to those, and it really makes it feel like it's more three-dimensional when it has these added shadows underneath things. And now that that little gray patch is dried, I can go back in and touch up with the yellow. All right, so this is my finished piece. Again, I used this Winsor Newton Cotman series. I think I used only about 3 or 4 colors out of the entire palette. This one is with the ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. This one is burnt sienna, burnt umber, and Hansa yellow medium. And then this one is the lemon yellow and the Hansa yellow, as well as the burnt sienna. And so these are 3 items that I remember in my house. My next sketch will have a few more items from that era. If you enjoyed watching this sketch, please give it a thumbs up. Feel free to visit my Ko-fi page as well. I have free swatches that you can download there. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.